Okay, so let's jump into types of fats, right? I don't know if I've ever run you guys through this. I think it's really important so we can talk about these trans fats. All a fatty acid is, when you get nerdy here for a second, a fatty acid is just a chain of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen atoms, right? Chemistry, fancy. So it also has a carboxyl group on the end of it, which is literally just more carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. These fatty acids are classified by how many carbon atoms and how many double bonds within the molecule. That's it. So we have a monounsaturated fat, mono meaning single. That means there's one double bond between two carbons, right? So this just means there's a single double bond between two carbons, monounsaturated. These in a refrigerator will harden at room temperature. They'll be soft. And then you have polyunsaturated fats. Poly, think of the Mormons, everybody. Polygamy. Poly meaning multiple. There are multiple double bonds. And the most well-known polyunsaturated fats are these omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, DHA, ALA, all these things, right? So you have a polyunsaturated fat, and then you have a saturated fat. A saturated fat has 0 double bonds. Polyunsaturated fats, they'll always be liquid. They're just going to be liquid, right? Saturated fats are almost always a solid until you were to heat them up in a microwave or throw them in a pan or something. But at room temperature, they're solid. That's a saturated fat, has more hydrogen, right? So trans fats, the fourth type of fat, we'll say, there's really only 3 fats. There is one natural trans fat inside of grass-fed beef, but it's actually helpful. So that's where this gets even trickier, because there are some saturated fats that are bad and some that are good. There are some polyunsaturated fats that are bad and some that are good. There are some trans fats, one trans fat that's found in meat that can be good. It's like blah, 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 and on, right? Now, generally speaking, trans fats are these funny shaped fats. They're not normal. They're not natural. They are never found as part of normal human biology. They simply aren't. The double bonds are on the opposite side of the fat chain. Now, this is not a political correct term right now, but trans. Think about it, like other end, reverse, right? Trans. This is a trans fat. So these double bonds are on the opposite end of that chain of fatty acid than where they are usually found in nature, naturally occurring fats, right? So it's kind of like I don't know how to say it. It's like a deformed fat, literally a deformed fat. Your body doesn't like them at all. Doesn't want to use them, but it doesn't know any better when you shove it in your pie hole, right? So to complicate matters more, the chemical structure of the double bonds found in polyunsaturated fats are unstable when they come in contact with a number of elements like light, heat, oxygen for oxidization. This makes them more likely to become damaged and toxic. So you can take these healthy fats and make them toxic through processing. And that's where we're going to get into this trans fat things. It's very easy to take normally healthy fats and basically turn them into oxidized fats that are bad for you. This is why you would never want to take polyunsaturated fats like omega-3s and cook with them at high heats, right? But tons of people take polyunsaturated fats, vegetable oils all the time and cook with them at very high heats, and they fry things in them and all this stuff that they're taking normally healthy food items and making them toxic. These polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats even are much better if you're going to use an oil to be like drizzled on food, like an avocado oil being drizzled on a salad, or olive oil being drizzled on a salad, right? These mono and poly fats, just drizzle them. You don't have to cook with them. You don't have to, right? Be better off cooking with like a grass-fed butter. Now, avocado oil is pretty stable. It's a monounsaturated fat. That's pretty stable for cooking. It has a really high smoke point. It's hard to damage, okay? But all in all, you're better off getting these monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats from whole foods, with a few exceptions. Like really well done, really high quality olive oil is great. Really high quality avocado oil is great. But we're going to talk about how those aren't always great because of hidden reasons that we're going to get into, right? So you're better off like eating avocados, eating pecans, eating omega-3s from wild caught fish, right? Nuts and seeds, all these things, olives. You're better off getting these things from whole foods. Eat whole foods, change the world, right? Duh. We've been talking about this for over a year now. Now that we get some of this science out of the way, okay? So we're talking about carbon atoms and oxygen and hydrogen chains and double bonds and all these things, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about how these unnatural oils are created. So we're going to start with probably the most prominent hydrogenated oil on earth right now, which is canola oil, okay? And this is what got me going here in Chiang Mai. Every single little food truck, everything I've been to, every single restaurant, canola oil, canola oil, canola oil. Even at the local markets where the locals do their grocery shopping, you cannot get olive oil. You cannot get olive oil. You cannot get avocado oil, nothing. It is only hydrogenated vegetable oils. That's all you can get in clear plastic bottles, so you know they are rancid. You never want to buy any oil in a clear bottle. If you're doing that, stop it immediately, right? Even light exposure can make these things rancid and oxidize them. So Probably the most common cooking oil on earth is canola oil. I assure you, virtually every single restaurant that you ever sit down in cooks your food in canola oil. I assure you, even fancy Italian restaurants. Next time you're at one, ask the server to ask the chef if they cook with olive oil. They will probably say, oh yes, we cook with a house-made olive oil blend. If they use the word blend, this means it's mostly canola oil with a little bit of low-quality olive oil thrown in there for good measure, right? It's astronomically cheaper to use these waste products. These oils are waste products of the agriculture industry, right? So even most store-bought extra virgin olive oil will have some canola oil in it. Now, canola oil is also an interchangeable term with rapeseed oil. You're probably familiar with rapeseed oil. It's just canola oil. It's an interchangeable term. So you might have olive oil and you check the ingredients and it has rapeseed oil in it as well. Now, when places don't use these oils, like for instance, one of my favorite restaurants in Austin, Texas is called Picnic. If you go to Picnic, they tell you about it right on their menu. It says, we use avocado oil to cook all of our dishes. By the way, it costs us 300% more to use avocado oil than it does to use canola oil, which is what most restaurants use. They're making a moral and ethical decision to serve you avocado oil, even though it costs them 300% more. And when you look at things like that, their prices are actually pretty damn good considering that they're doing that. They're crushing their profit margins. They can have a 300% higher profit margin by using canola oil, and they use avocado oil. So let's talk about canola oil. The Weston A. Price Foundation has this article called The Great Con-Ola, as in con, C-O-N, con job, right? So this Great Con-Ola article explains how Americans were duped into buying this poisonous, toxic chemical by the ton. And it says, quote, like all modern vegetable oils, canola oil goes through the process of caustic refining, bleaching, and degumming, all of which involve high temperatures of chemicals of questionable safety. Also, because canola oil is high in omega-3s, which can easily become rancid and foul-smelling when subjected to oxygen and high temperatures, it must be deodorized. End quote. Okay, so processing with high temperatures, chemicals of questionable safety that easily become rancid and foul-smelling and then need to be deodorized. And this is used in virtually every single cooking method in every single restaurant globally. What the fuck? Wow, right? Let's pick out some of those key words. Caustic. The definition of caustic is able to burn or corrode organic tissue by chemical action. Sounds lovely. Bleaching. Whitening by a chemical process. Chemicals, obviously, we don't want chemicals of questionable safety. And then rancid. Something being rancid literally means smelling or tasting unpleasant as a result of being old or stale. Delicious. The deck is just stacked, right? Vegetable oils are absolutely fantastic for us. This is crazy, everybody. This is absolutely insane. Now, if you remember, I did a whole episode on baby formula. And I talked about Savannah and her baby formula. Literally every baby formula on the market that is a top-selling brand has hydrogenated vegetable oils in it. Think about that. One more person tries to debate me on formula versus breast milk. I swear to God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's natural selection at this point. You can't be that stupid. You simply can't. It should be unacceptable to be that stupid. I don't know what to tell you, literally. It's just ridiculous. I'm so tired of having these same conversations with people, right? Now, just like refined processed carbohydrates, a non-human food, again, eat whole foods, change the world. A non-human food has become a staple all across the world, all across the globe. I'm looking at it here now in Chiang Mai. It's making me sick. How did this happen? Let's talk about it. Trans fats were first created, they're credited with being created in the 1980s, but it's been done for a long time. So in the 1980s, this idea of hydrogenation became popular. So that's literally adding hydrogen to vegetable oils to make them more solid for easier storage and transport. So they can store and transport similar to saturated fats, right? But this has been around a lot longer than the 1980s. So in the 1900s, there was literally an abundance of soy and a shortage of butter from cows, right? So there was a shortage of butter and all this soy, and they couldn't figure out what to do with all these byproducts of soy. So margarine was created. Margarine from soybean oil, which spawned a whole new multi-billion-dollar market over the next 150 years, created an absolute craze, right? What are we at now? So 120 years this stuff has been around, taking soybean oil and creating margarine out of it to replace butter. Now, what's a good way to do that? Well, convince people that saturated fat raises your cholesterol and will kill you, and then get them to replace their healthy saturated fats with these hydrogenated vegetable oils. Again, marketing. Just like sugar. If you haven't read The Case Against Sugar by Gary Taubes, you have to. You have to understand how these things work, right? We're not given dietary advice by governments and doctors and experts. We're given it by marketing companies that spend billions. Even in the mid-1940s and 50s, they were spending millions of dollars a year pushing sugar on people, right? It's unbelievable. Falsified studies and all this stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous. Same thing with these vegetable oil companies, right? Now, by the 1960s, these new, we'll call them Franken fats, right? These man-made fats had virtually replaced all saturated fats in the household. Now you're talking about cooking sprays and margarine and crock pot, big tubs of margarine, blah, 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 because all the health experts were saying that saturated fat was bad for you and that these vegetable oils must be healthy because they're not saturated, right? Unbelievable. Now, however, by 1988, 2 years after I was born, this is 30 years ago, there was already studies finding that trans fats could be a major cause of heart disease. In 1988, they knew this, a major cause of heart disease. By 1994, it was stated that over 30,000 deaths annually were tied to the consumption of trans fats. 30,000 deaths directly tied to trans fats. However, even with all this mounting evidence, because of the ridiculous marketing gimmicks and schemes, it took until 2006 to pass a law that banned trans fats from products in grocery stores. And there's a caveat there. A lot of you think that trans fats were banned from grocery stores. Yes, technically they were, but they had a certain amount of time. I think they have to like 2015 or something insane to get these things out of their products. And then there's the caveat of even a product labeled trans fat free can still contain 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving, and they don't have to list it on the label. They can literally say this is a trans fat free food when you're getting half a gram of trans fat in every single serving. It's unbelievable. This is nuts. So that's my stance on sugar. That's one of the single most harmful things. I mean, sugar and these hydrogenated oils, hand in hand, as bad as it gets. Unbelievable. So let's dig into why this episode is called Oil, the Hidden Assassin.